Hello and welcome to another episode of Burning Questions with Eric. I've had several readers ask me to talk a little more about Shorn. What's he doing now? What happens to him after the war ends? So I spent some time thinking about it, and I think I've got some pretty good ideas. Uh, One thing is, I can never imagine him just staying around. I mean, now that the war's over, he just doesn't strike me as the kind of person to sit back on the beach, put his feet up, and order a margarita. You know, he's not going to just sit around. There's nothing to do. And then it occurred to me that despite the fact that everything's worked out well here and the day has been saved and everyone's happy, he's lost everything still. He's exiled. He's lost his home. He can never return. He's lost all his friends. He's lost his family. He doesn't have any contact with them, and he never will. And that's got to be a difficult thing to take. And on top of that, he's got a lot of unrest. He doesn't have peace in his heart because if you think about it, he comes from a hyper-violent, very warlike people. He's no doubt done many things that he's not proud of. And the one that got him exiled that he refused to do was really just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, not the tip of the iceberg. I mean, the straw that broke the camel's back. He as if you'll recall, and if I can recall, I'm sorry to say I forget these things, but he refused to destroy an orphanage or some sort of something where children were held, and that was what got him exiled. And so no doubt he's done many terrible things before that. So this sort of thing has no doubt weighing on him, and being around Netra has really awakened him to the how important life is and the sanctity of life. And so uh, when the war was going on, he had a cause to fight for, he had something to live for. And then the war ends and he's got nothing. So one day he just leaves. And I imagine that he first goes to see Chakra. And I think his main reason for going to see Chakra is he has a son back home. And uh, like any father, he's proud of him. And like any father, he hopes that his son has become or is becoming the kind of person that he could be proud of. And so he goes to Chakra, and I can imagine their initial conversation, him saying something to Chakra like, you know, your daughter saved my life, literally. And Chakra will of course say, well, Netra says you saved hers too. And he kind of brushes that off, and he says, well, whatever that is, I came here because I wanted you to know that you can be proud of your daughter, that your daughter is an honorable, she's a good person, and you can be proud of her, because that's what he would want someone to come and tell him. I mean, as a parent myself, I can't imagine much else I'd rather hear than someone to come and say, your kids they're good people. So he goes to do that, and he also kind of wants to see the Takare, and now that the war is over, and they've recovered their memories, they've returned, and they're in their ancestral home. They've returned to their roots, and I see them as, when they're not growing crops and doing the things you have to do to live, that they're practicing martial arts, not as a way of waging war, but as a spiritual practice, as a way to grow and challenge themselves. And so obviously they're not going to crowd around him and yell Taka-Slin and you know, save us, that kind of thing. But they can acknowledge him as a great warrior, and he can acknowledge them as you know, they've really got something going on. And so after that, he just strikes out and he heads west. And I kind of see what he does in the beginning, and I don't know for how long this goes on, but similar to I don't know, I guess, but now if I watch it again, I probably think it was pretty cheesy, but when I was a kid in the 70s, I loved the show Kung Fu. And I loved the way that Kwai Chang was a man of peace, and he would traveled around. He was a wanderer, and he would look for work, and he wanted to stay out of trouble. Of course, inevitably, trouble would find him, and then he'd do what he had to do to stop it and to save the protect the innocent, that kind of thing. And I see Shorn doing that because he wants to be free of the demons. He wants to atone for what he's done in his life. And so while he's not necessarily looking for good deeds, when he runs across them, a chance to make a difference, unlike with the Takari in the beginning, back in when he first appeared in the story, how he didn't want anything to do with them, he'll, okay, I'm going to do something about this, and of course he can. And so I sort of envision him walking up to a farmhouse, for instance, and of course the farmer's going to grab his family and run into the farmhouse and bolt the door, and they're all going to be freaking out, this monster's coming to get us. But once he can get them past that and realize he's not there to kill them all and take everything they've got, then he'd be an amazing amount of help on a farm. I mean, he's stronger than like 5 people. And so I would imagine after a while they want him to never leave. But of course, being this character that he is, he's going to keep wandering. But I can see him going to a barn raising, for instance, and everybody's gathered together, and they've got ropes on the big center post and that they're going to lift into place, and he can just sort of say, well, step aside, I got this, and he can just lift it up. I mean, he'd be pretty awesome. And of course, inevitably, he's there, and some thugs, or who knows, if someone's come by to extort money from the farmer and his family, or threaten him, or steal from him or something, and I can just see Shorn walking out of the barn, and the looks on their faces, and I could see him helping out in towns, and just wherever he goes, of course, he draws a lot of attention, and then something happens, and he can step in and save things. That's sort of where I see him going. I would like for him to pop up in the new series that I've just started on, and so I'll see how that goes. I would like to, hopefully in the near future, write down a few chapters of some of his adventures after he leaves Netra and Karath behind, but I'm just going to have to see how the time goes. But now you know a little bit more about Shorn and where he's at and what he's doing. Thanks. Have a great day.